Hello, second grade friends. Welcome back to Number Corner. For Number Corner today, we will be reading and interpreting our final graph for January. What you need to read and interpret our graph is your whiteboard, marker, and eraser. You can pause the video now to get what you need. Now let's have a look at our last graph. I want you to take a moment and look at this graph and think about some of the things that you notice. Now you may have noticed a few different things. You may be thinking that this looks pretty similar to some of the other graphs that we've seen, and you would be right. You may also have noticed that we have two rows in our graph, but we don't have any columns this time. You may also have noticed that we have pictures, one of a basketball hoop and another of a computer, and these pictures are repeated quite a few times. You may also have noticed it says gym in our first row up here and computer lab in the row below. Show a connection if you notice these little pictures on the bottom. These pictures are pretty important. They're showing a basketball hoop and the computer, and it says equals 2 students. That's giving us some pretty important information. It's telling us that each picture shows 2 student votes. Last time we looked at a bar graph that showed 5 votes per bar that was filled in. This is showing 2 votes per picture. It's the same idea, even though it looks a little different. Let's keep looking, and we'll come back and talk more about this. Now, I want you to be thinking. We've noticed a few things. Now I want you to think. What is this survey question? What do you think the person who gave the survey wanted to know? Remember, when we have a survey, we're collecting data or information. What do you think the question was? Now you may have a few different ideas. You might be thinking, would you rather go to the gym or to the computer lab? Now you might be thinking, well, what's your favorite class, PE or media? Because I know that when we go to PE, sometimes we play basketball in the gym. And I know when we go to the media center, sometimes we need to use the computers or be in the computer lab. Well, it could be either of those questions. A good question we can use is, would you rather go to the gym or go to the computer lab? Other questions would work too, as long as they fit the data. Now, as you look at this graph, I want you to think, is this a picture graph or a bar graph? Remember, a picture graph gives us information with pictures. A bar graph gives us information by filling in sections of the graph. What do you think this one is? Show a connection if you're thinking this is a picture graph. Yeah, exactly. This is a picture graph because the pictures represent our choices or votes. What do you think we should title this graph? Thinking about what our question was, what would a good title be that represents this data or information? Now again, you might have a few different ideas. One title that we can use that works is favorite class, or student's favorite class, or favorite place to go in the school. Any of those would work. We're going to use favorite class. Now that we have a little more information about the picture or about the graph, let's dig a little deeper into some of the numbers. Now is where you're going to need your whiteboard to help me solve some equations. Now, we have our graph here again. The title that we're going to use is favorite class. And our survey question is right here. Would you rather go to the gym or the computer lab? And we already know that this is a picture graph. Do you remember what each picture stands for? Look down here for help. Each picture represents two student choices. So instead of thinking that, well, one picture of the basketball hoop is one student that voted for gym class for their favorite class or PE class, it's actually two students. Each picture means two. Show me a connection if you notice this last picture down here. I wonder what this means. If each picture shows me two votes, what do you think half of a picture shows me? If you're thinking, well, maybe half a picture just shows one vote, show a connection. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. We only see half this picture, so this must only mean one vote. With that in mind, I want you to think. Use your whiteboards and your markers, and use our calendar markers down here. Think about an equation you could write to show how many students participated in this survey. Write it on your whiteboard. Show a connection if you were thinking this equation works. 15 plus 14 equals something. Yeah, I should see quite a few connections. If we count by twos, we can count with me, that 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. This half is only 1, so now we jump to 15. 15 students, like gym class or PE class. And counting by twos again, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 students that like computer lab. Well, we would add those together to get 29. Show a connection if you added those all up to get 29 students in all. Good work. And that's our first calendar marker right down here. Now, let's think which calendar marker makes sense for our next question. How many more students chose gym over computer lab? Think about these equations. Which one makes the most sense? Write it on your whiteboard. Now, if you started writing 15 minus 14 equals something, that's good thinking. We're thinking about how many more students chose gym over the computer lab. So we take all the students that chose gym or PE, that's 15 minus all of the students that chose computer lab, and that, remember, is 14. 15 minus 14 equals 1. Show a connection if that's the thinking you were using. All right, let's look at our last question for our last graph. What questions do the remaining equations represent? Now, if we look down here, these are the last two equations we haven't used. Think about the numbers. Think about our picture graph. What do these equations represent? Now, if you were thinking, well, 29 minus 15, I have 29 students in all. If I take 15 away, well, that's the 15 that chose gym. Then I'd be left with the 14 who chose the computer lab. So this blank spot must show the students that chose the computer lab. Show a connection if that's what you were thinking. Let's look at our very last one. What is this blank space telling me? Now, if you were thinking 14, well, that's how many students chose the computer lab. Plus, well, this has to be the other half of the students because I know that altogether we have 29. So it must be 14 plus 15 equals 29. Well, 15 students chose gym. That must be the 15 students who chose gym. Show a connection if you were thinking that too. Wonderful thinking today, mathematicians. Now, I want you to show your teacher that you did this hard work with me on our last graph by turning in your seesaw activity with our super secret password. Now, show your teacher you watched the whole video by typing in the word gym, G-Y-M, into this blank space in Seesaw. Excellent work again, mathematicians, and I'll see you next time for Number Corner.